Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, what a week it's been for UKIP. The party with the third highest vote share at the general election has, just since Tuesday, lost a leader. Seen the return of Nigel Farage, even if only temporarily, and seen the favourite to take over end up in hospital after an altercation in the European Parliament. Our Ellie's been watching the soap opera unfold.
OK, so we've all heard the rumours about the internal divisions within UKIP. Well, this week they played out in front of our very eyes on the TV screens in the most dramatic of ways. Cast your mind back to this. Shouldn't be hard, it was only just over 3 weeks ago. Diane James was the new leader.
Support me, work with me, win with me.
18 days later, she realised that wasn't going to happen. In her resignation statement, she said she didn't have sufficient authority nor the full support of her MEP colleagues and party officers to continue. There was also this clue in the official form she filled in for the Electoral Commission, where she signed her name with a little Latin note next to it. It means under duress. In the meantime, Nigel Farage seemed pretty chipper, explaining he was the interim leader again.
I keep trying to escape. I keep getting over the wall and running for the hills, and before I'm finally free, they drag me back.
Though not everybody agreed.
Who's the leader of your party?
Well, it doesn't have one because she's resigned. The UKIP constitution is quite clear. In these circumstances, the National Executive Committee has the right to appoint an interim leader, which I presume it will do at its meeting on the 17th of October.
I'm told the NEC might have met earlier, but someone is on a cruise, so it wouldn't be Corrit. It was starting to feel a bit like a soap opera.
I see it as a very positive thing, very positive for PR, and of course people enjoy the excitement. It's almost like being a part of Dynasty.
By close of play, this man, who probably would have been leader last time if he hadn't been barred from standing, had thrown his hat in the ring. But then things went really off script when he, Stephen Wolfe, ended up in hospital after a meeting with colleagues that went wrong. There are mixed accounts of what happened.
It's two grown men getting involved in an altercation. It's not very seemly behaviour. We're talking about, a dispute that finished up physically, yeah.
I understand there was an argument between some MEPs, and Stephen, I think, picked a fight with one of them and came off worst.
It later transpired that the MEPs had been arguing about reports Mr Wolfe had considered defecting to the Tories. That had ended in a scuffle with this man.
There was no punches thrown, there was no face slapping, there was no digs, there was nothing. It was, as you know, people in Hull would term as, handbags at dawn.
He even tweeted a picture of his hands to prove it. But Mr Wolfe's team questioned that version of events and say his injuries would suggest otherwise. Either way, the two men have been in touch and say they want to meet, handbags and all, to sort things out. But that might not be the end of the story. So part of UKIP's charm has always been to say and do things the other parties would never even dream of. But this week has been different, and a number of senior UKIP sources have told me that what happens next will be make or break for the party. And they say that will depend on who the next leader is. Before all this happened, Stephen Wolfe, seen as a disciple of Nigel Farage, would have been favourite.
Obviously, and it must surely be obvious to anybody, having seen this, that Stephen Wolfe and of course Mike Huckenberry, I don't think Mike would put his hat into the ring. Surely they can't now consider that either of them could stand in a leadership contest, surely to goodness.
The party's biggest donor, Aaron Banks, disagreed in this tweet. It's fairly indicative of a party split between those who think the new leader should be moulded in Nigel Farage's image and those who can think of little worse. For now, though, a call for calm.
The party is bigger than any one individual. Everybody has a responsibility within UKIP to safeguard its reputation, and that's what I'm asking all people to do now as we move forward.
And it can bounce back.
It will bounce back.
The drama may be over for this week, but with the leadership campaign looming, there will be plenty more episodes to come.
And we're joined now by the UKIP MEP, Bill Etheridge. He was at the meeting where this so-called altercation between Stephen Woolf and Mike Hookham took place, and he stood to be leader in the party's last leadership contest that only finished in September, last month, of course. And we've learned, while on air, that Mr. Woolf has now left the hospital in Strasbourg. Bill Etheridge, were punches thrown?
Well, good morning. And first of all, I think we should, as all MEPs for UKIP, apologise to our membership and to our supporters for this unseemly nonsense. As regards were punches thrown, I was the first on the scene. I didn't see any punches thrown. What I saw was Mike standing with his hands down by his side and Stephen lying on the floor halfway through an unlatched door. I think there's going to be a full investigation by the party chairman.
So he was on the floor?
Yeah.
So he could have, before you got on the scene, there could have been blows exchanged.
In the 15 to 30 seconds before I got there, there's always that possibility, but Mike has denied that there was any punches thrown, and frankly, I didn't see any evidence that there were, other than the fact that Stephen had tumbled.
Stephen Woolf's friends have issued a statement saying that independent medical examinations suggest that he has got wounds, bruising, which cannot be explained by simply a fall to the floor.
Well, I'm sure the chairman of the party will look into that and see the exact information that's being discussed there. When it's something that's put out by sources or someone else's friends, let's wait and see the actual information. Was
it Mr. Woolf's idea that the dispute should be settled outside?
Yeah, Stephen stood up and said, if this is the temperature of your comments, Mike, I think we should take it outside and sort it out man to man. He then made a big show of taking his jacket off and walking outside, to which, unfortunately, and I think he said he regrets it, Mike actually then followed outside and did the same thing himself. Neither of them should have done it. It was foolish.
If that is Mr. Woolf's response to an argument, no matter how heated among his own MEPs, does that disqualify him to stand as leader?
It doesn't disqualify him. It says something about his temperament, and what I will say is that it wasn't a heated argument at the start. We were discussing with Stephen the fact that he'd been in a conversation with the Conservative Party about joining, which he'd only told them a day or two earlier that he wasn't going to join, and we were asking if that was anything to do with the fact that he'd heard Diane James was standing down.
That was the purpose of the meeting, as I understand it, was to find out what Mr. Woolf was doing vis-à-vis the Conservative Party.
Yes, and unfortunately, due to this altercation, we never got an answer. You know, I personally would like to know, and I think it's got to come out. If Stephen stands, we need to know what he was doing.
What was it that was said? Because I understand this happened quite quickly into the meeting. The meeting hadn't been underway for very long. What was it that was said that said, take your jacket off, we'll settle this outside?
Stephen began speaking about how upset he was that he hadn't been able to stand in the summer. About his forms being in late, this infamous 17 minutes. Mike piped up and said, well, that's your fault, no one else's. To which Stephen reacted angrily, and we could get no further conversation, and we didn't get to the actual point of the meeting.
So that was the extent of the provocation, to say that's your fault. Nothing worse than that.
I mean, he said it in forthright terms. But he wasn't swearing. He basically said, you know, that's your fault, Stephen. You know, it's your responsibility.
Are you going to stand in this leadership contest now?
Up until this happened, I was seriously considering rolling in with a unity candidate to try and make sure that we didn't have people who'd been negative towards the party and towards Nigel taking over. Now I don't see that I can support Stephen, and yes, I will be standing.
Standing, all right. Isn't the bitter truth? Your previous leader lasted for 18 days. 2 MPs have now, from reports, said, step outside and we'll sort this with the jackets off. It's hard to avoid the conclusion that UKIP is not a proper functioning party without Nigel Farage at the helm. You just can't survive without him.
Nigel's a fantastic leader, and for a period of time he has led us very, very strongly and powerfully. It's up to us now to take responsibility, and that's one of the reasons why I want to stand to do it, to bring the party together.
But every time he goes, you fall apart, and he ends up being back in. There is no functioning UKIP, I would suggest, without Nigel Farage?
Well, it's up to us to make sure that we get the systems in place and make sure that we do strong leadership pulling the party together. And we can do it because we've got 4 million voters, 34,000 members.
They'll be
and we don't
feeling
look at the
they
polls.
must be feeling very let down, these 4 million
Well,
voters.
they are, and it's up to us to make sure we do the right thing and look after them and be there to represent them.
All right, Bill Etheridge of UKIP, thank you.
Thank you.
I've been